that our Ed Equity report that is crafted largely by Hilda and her staff represent all the wonderful things that are going on around this table. Because this group comes out of law around the Minority Educator Act, which is now the Ed Equity Act. And these things need to be captured, funded, replicated, studied, analyzed, so that we can keep moving forward. That's the point of the group. We need to stop our presentations by 2:45, and I will tell you why in order to be your chair and stick to our agenda, in that we have 3 items at the end of the meeting we need to discuss. And we really do keep you here just to 3 o'clock. We honor your time and scoot you out as fast as we can to the timing. We had 3 presentations scheduled for today, each half an hour. One of our presentations is not able to happen, is the one from Portland Public Schools on dual language. We're unable to be here today, but we do have Teach Oregon, Lessons Learned, and also Aspiring Administrators from AWALA. And so what I am going to ask is that our presenters present about 15 minutes instead of 30. We're all pretty good at extemporaneous impromptu fixes. And give us 5 minutes to talk about your program, because, that's kind of what this is about. And each one of you should be thinking to yourself, how do I fit in with this? How does this have relevance for me? What can I do, that's kind of like this, or sparks me an idea, right? And that will take us through about 45 minutes, I think. Then what we want to talk about is the legislation that we have moving forward. We want to talk about that because this isn't just philosophical. This is an action group. Also, we want to talk about a convening that we're going to be having around talent management. And we also want to talk about some of the presentations we are giving, in case you all want to join us or in case it's at your place. So that we need 15 minutes for. So hopefully that's what we'll do, and I'll kind of time keep us. Don't forget we have refreshments if you guys are hungry. Get up, take care of yourselves. And if you go through that door, we have the restrooms to the right. Okay, so I'm going to start with, what have I done?
Number 2 and 3.
Well,
do it fast.
Yeah, there's no time for either one of these. But what I think we can do is, we're not going to have time to review the notes from November 17th.
Oh, I thought everybody read them October 26th.
Hopefully everybody read them. Here's a problem though, and I will say this. We met. We had a convening. It was a community convening at the middle school. It was awesome. It was great. We had a lot of people show up. We have yet to have time to review the notes we sent you from the convening, which asked 3 major questions. A lot of you were there. But we've never discussed it as a team. And frankly, we're not going to do it today. We do not have time today. I don't know when we'll discuss it. I hope you've read them. That's all I know, excuse me. And what we do need, though, is to approve the meeting notes, because we are that kind of group. So review and approval of the October 20th meeting notes and also the November 17th meeting notes. I'm just going to ask for somebody to make a motion, please.
I'll move. This is April.
Okay, April moves that we accept the notes from the October 20th and November 17th. We're going to do them together. Meeting notes. We have a first. Do we have a second? Second the motion, Robert Nava. Any questions about the meeting notes for those of you that were at the meetings October 20th and November 17th? With a promise that someday in the sweet by and by we'll actually be able to review the notes from the convening.
And we did put a copy of that
Yep.
in their packet, so you can be
You have a
looking at
copy.
this. We pulled all of the specific ideas out.
Yep. So, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting notes have passed.
Thank you.
Now we'll go on to Erin. Please present to us, and I also have handouts for those of you that would like one. Take one and pass. I only made 10, so you may need to share. This is on Teach Oregon.
All right.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. Just a very brief background of Teach Oregon, and I'm not sure how much has been shared with this group along the way, but as everybody introduced, there's a little piece of Teach Oregon, or the promise of future Teach Oregon, or the reason behind Teach Oregon in many of your introductions and what you're working on. Teach Oregon really became evident on the continuum of teacher effectiveness when Chalkboard was focusing on teacher effectiveness of existing teachers in the classroom and how to elevate voice and how to elevate professional development, evaluation, performance evaluation, creative compensation models, and mentoring and all of those pieces for existing teachers. And as we, 10 years, that class project has been in place, Teach Oregon became evident that in order to support effective teachers in the classroom, we need to look along the continuum. And wouldn't it be fabulous to provide some pilot opportunities for K-12, higher ed, community college to come to the table and start to innovate and imagine teacher preparation, and that shoreline or pipeline or however you want to describe it, but that continuum of not only teachers in teacher prep going into teaching, but also how do we grow our own, how do we energize and excite high school, middle school students, how do we engage our communities, all of those pieces is really where Teach Oregon, the idea stemmed from. And so they really are innovative models for the collaborative teacher. And this is where, for 3 years, our Teach Oregon projects have been based. There are 5 consortiums, which are universities and K-12 districts. So you have Teach Oregon Central. So you've got Jefferson County, Sisters, Crook County, High Desert, Bend, Lapine, and COCC. That is one consortium. You have Teach Oregon PAC, and that's up here with the Sherwood, Tillamook, Newburgh, CCC, Woodburn is part of that as well. And then you've got Portland Metro, TLC, Portland Public, David Douglas, North Clackamas, Portland State. And you have Salem-Keizer Collaborative, Mid-Valley, that's Western, and Willamette, Corbin was part of that, Salem-Keizer. And then you have the Teach Springfield down south, and that's Pacific University, Eugene, Lane Community College, Springfield, U of O, and OSU Cascades. So 5 different consortiums, and this went out for bid. The money that is supporting Teach Oregon is housed in the network at ODE and through legislation, and this really is innovative work in a consortium model. As we moved into Teach Oregon for the last 3 years, you can see that it composed of 13 districts, 4 community colleges, and 8 colleges and universities. So that's kind of the all 5 together what was composed. We have the report back from Eco Northwest. And when I talk about the impact of Teach Oregon over the past 3 years, we're looking at the result of the last 3 years, plus testimonials that's coming out, lessons learned from each of the consortiums. Each of the consortiums have already submitted final reports to ODE. The Teach Oregon grant has already sunsetted as of December. However, most of the consortiums are continuing their work and sustaining their work through the end of this year by stretching grant money throughout the June. So there were 4 different areas of impact and 4 different blueprints to actually create and innovate and test. The area of recruitment and selection, clinical practice, hiring and placement, and mentoring and induction. And all of these blueprints had guiding principles that were established. The teams came together, they built their path and tested their path and evaluated their path along the way over 3 years. Some of the things that we have learned, the key learnings under recruitment and selection, is that we had 300 teacher candidates participate. High schools earning college credits, we had 180. in these consortiums. Over $275,000 worth of scholarships. And 150 were actually went on to enroll in the education prep program. In the clinical practice, there were 315 student teachers at a level 3, and let me explain that. So based on co-teaching model, a level 0 would be 0 training for the teacher candidate. The teacher candidate and the cooperating teacher did not receive any level of co-teaching training. A level 1 would be the student teacher, the candidate teacher would actually get co-teaching training, but the cooperating teacher did not. And level 3, both received the training and were embedded in a partnership school with the Teach Oregon. So we had 315 teacher candidates that were actually at that level 3. So very deep co-teaching, training, and practice. Some of the things within the clinical practice that we have found is that more than 85% said that because of the clinical practice co-teaching model, they felt that their teaching practices were more effective. We also found that because of the co-teaching model, that relationship with the cooperating teacher and supervising teacher was a much more comfortable, much more engaging, deeper conversations. The candidates shared that they felt better prepared, that there was a higher retention after 1 year of teaching out in the field for Teach Oregon teachers that were participating, and that 90%, more than 90%, said the clustering of candidates together with the co-teaching model was a model that was really beneficial for support, beneficial in impacting their effectiveness as teachers and their preparation for teaching in the classroom. So when we moved to hiring and in placement, we found that there was an increased number of candidates and hiring of teachers of color for those candidates coming out of Teach Oregon consortiums. So I'll say that again. There was an increased number of candidates that participated and hiring out of the Teach Oregon, teachers of color out of Teach Oregon consortiums. We also found an increased number of...
Does that mean like higher from previous years?
Yeah, based on non-Teach Oregon education prep programs.
Oh, okay.
There was a higher percentage of teachers of color that
Thank
were
you.
hired. We also found an increased number of hires from the Teach Oregon partners in general, not just teachers of color, but more teachers that were hired that were coming out of consortiums of Teach Oregon. And we also found there was an increased number of hires of ESOL and bilingual candidates coming out of the Teach Oregon consortiums. As far as mentoring and induction, we had 1,079 candidates that were mentored in their first year of teaching. And 98% felt that it was effective in helping develop their teaching skills. So nearly every single teacher candidate that entered teaching who had a mentor found that it was helpful in developing their teaching skills.
Erin, I have a question really
Sure.
quick. I'm going to jump in. Did you say already out of the Teach Oregon folks here, what percentage in the program were teachers of color?
I did not.
Okay.
And I'd have to go back and...
No problem.
Yeah.
And the other thing was,
question.
the mentors, were they mentors of color?
That's a great question, too.
Okay, thank you. Keep going. It's great.
Great questions.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so the future work. I've kind of laid out after 3 years, here we are, now what? And I know our Teach Oregon consortiums are asking me that. I'm getting emails and questions every day. Now what? Now what? We really are valuing this. We're just beginning. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So let's talk about what is really important. I know that Sean Bean pulled together the different consortiums, I believe, in the fall. and they did a lot of just engagement around what's next and what is most important. And much to the credit of the work of this council and the work that Teach Oregon has been doing, is that you really want to focus more in depth and just absolutely embed the program of Teach Oregon in equity. And you'll notice that I've got the 3 different programs for Chalkboard, because this has become probably one of the most important priorities for Chalkboard, is to embed all of the programs in equity. And what that looks like is that equity is foundational. It becomes foundational in the work, that our process design uses continuous improvement with equity through the lens. You've heard of improvement science, continuous improvement. That's a strategy to get to this methodology. Broaden the table. You heard me talk about that a little bit with the school board work, but this is absolutely critical in the work for Teach Oregon. We need to continue to broaden the table. We need to continue to ask who's missing, whose voice needs to enter into this. And then we need to center local context. Park Rose is very different from Corvallis, very different from Salem Kaiser. We have different local contexts that we have to pay attention to, and the communities need to be involved, and our community colleges and universities. So local context, creating that network improvement communities, those of you who are familiar with improvement science, that's the communities coming together with that common purpose and movement with the same goals. So 2.0 can look like, right? So this is our typical Teach Oregon design team. We've got our educational prep programs at the table. We had school districts at the table. We had our community colleges, and we had a coach. Okay. Very, very status quo, what you would normally see, not diverse. We did not have a broad table, intentionally a broad table, as we want to move into. And so as we look at broadening the table, you can see that we add students, we add more communities of color, we add more teachers of color. So all across the board, as we move forward, the recommendation would be to include an infrastructure that is created that's more inclusive and broaden the authentic, meaningful engagement. The other recommendation that came out of the group is that through recruitment and selection is expanding the scope and secrets of growing your own. And that I heard a little bit of the cadet teaching. And so how do we engage our students, especially our middle school students and our high school students, around teaching, and how inspiring and how they can start seeing themselves as teachers. And not only teachers in the state of Oregon, teachers in their own community, and that they have that pathway, they have that opportunity. And then looking at clinical practice and really operationalizing that culturally sustaining practice within content and within professional development for our cooperating teachers. It's one thing to get a diverse teaching field. We've got our candidates in teaching, but if we don't have that culturally sustaining practice that's embedded with our existing teachers and in our content and in our preparation, then it just makes the support lacking, and the retention is not. So we need to pay attention to that as well. Hiring and placement, operationalizing, again, culturally sustaining and relevant practices, and accountable retention plans. How do we recruit, we train, we hire our teachers, and our teachers of color, but how are we supporting and elevating that support to the point where retention is not, we're not losing our teachers. And then mentoring and induction, obviously the culturally sustaining practices that shift the system and our strength-based approaches. So those are the areas as we look at what we've learned from what's the future holds for Teach Oregon. In professional development, again, it's equity, educational equity for the design to inform the work. Okay. So that, in a nutshell, is where Teach Oregon landed after 3 years, and where are we hopeful in heading. Right now, the network money is in the governor's budget, and the Teach Oregon is embedded in there. And so our hope is that we will be able to continue, especially continue focusing on that relationship with the community college pathways and the work that they're doing. And we heard Cecilia talk a little bit about that today, especially the credits and that pathway moving down into middle and high with cadet teaching, so that that's very articulated and smooth and inviting and sustainable and supportive for our teachers, especially our teachers of color, for the future. So I would
Very
open
good,
it up
guys.
for questions. I tried to stay within my 15 minutes.
You did well.
All right.
You did very, very well. Guys, we have time to take a question or two.
I have one.
Please, go ahead,
In the
Veronica.
original recruitment pool of 300 students,
Yes.
do you have a sense of where they came from in terms of the geography? Were they from the regions or were they from outside the regions?
That's a great question. You know, Cecilia, would you be able to maybe answer that from your perspective? So when you were recruiting, intentionally recruiting teacher candidates for the programs, was it primarily the Grow Your Own regionally, or was it from outside?
Well, we're a community college, just most community colleges have large communities. And so we reestablished an education department. And as we reestablished it with our support of Teach Oregon, in fact, you guys helped fund a bilingual, bicultural full-time faculty member, but we opened our doors to everyone because, so we went from 0 to, it's well over 200 students have declared interest in the Ed major right now. But a smaller category of that are specifically in our bilingual pathway. They receive tuition assistance, which is, we've gotten some help from Teach Oregon on that, but they have to demonstrate proficiency in Spanish. They have to demonstrate that they're taking education courses, obviously, we can't fund everybody. They have to demonstrate that they're maintaining a 2.75 GPA, and they have to do 10 hours of volunteer work. So it's fairly labor intensive. So we have a very large number of diverse students. To get the students to fully apply and do all the work for that, there's a little bit of a gap. I was just talking to a student right now. We had to add a Foundations of Ed class, and I have to teach it because we literally. So I was teaching yesterday, and one of my students, Carolina, came up to me afterwards because I was explaining this pathway. These are brand new students; they're second term in college. She's like, "Oh, I can't," and so because she had already disclosed that she speaks Spanish at home. So I'm pushing her, but these students take a little, I don't want to take the test. I'm like, you could sit here and talk to me for a while, and then the test isn't that hard. Then she was kidding me. She's like, you make a lot of errors. I said, I wrote the initial test. See, Carolina, you can do it. So then I sent her the paperwork yesterday. Not a word. But Carolina we have to push these students. So it's a long answer to a short question. We have 26, I believe, that are fully in the program right now, receiving money. That might include a couple of them that left in the fall. So we had probably 5, I think, do their proficiency test to start in the winter term. We had 23 go through the proficiency test in the fall term. Now, not all of those 23 students actually were able to enter the pathway because they didn't. They also have to test into 100 level because we don't have enough money to start supporting students if they're at the remedial level. So this is so I have a much higher proportion of diverse students than I actually have in the bilingual pathway, which isn't surprising with a new pathway and a significant.
Can you mute your phone if you're not speaking? Thank you.
That's a long answer to a short question.
Well, and Veronica, were you thinking about, is it more regional based at this point, or are students coming from all over the state?
Right, that's what I was trying to
and-
zero in on.
Oh,
And I
sorry.
think,
No, that's okay. It was interesting information nonetheless.
so, yeah, one thing I would very quickly add is that I think because of the relationships and the way of the outreach and building those relationships and that added support to help knock down some of the barriers, we're finding the majority centralized, and that's why with only 5, our hope is to scale this, because
Yes.
every community,
That's the
again,
point.
we need to scale
Can't just
so
be one
every
community.
community has the opportunity to have that pathway.
Right.
If you can actually eventually cost something out and make it systematic, then you can replicate it.
Absolutely.
We have community colleges,
Yep.
school districts everywhere.
Yep.
So to me, that's the end game, is I love the idea of like what you can do today, and these kinds of 3-year programs are great. They're not great if you stop funding
That's right.
them,
They
and
need
it's
to
not
stay.
great if it's only in the valley. So we're gonna thank Erin. Guys, let's thank her. And we're gonna move on to Victor and his
Thank you.
program
Let's see,
too.
15 minutes
Well,
or less.
sorry, no,
Okay,
15 at least.
perfect. Okay.
Do your thing.
So,
Just gotta save 15 minutes for this other stuff.
you know, I have, I guess, multiple ideas about what to share right now with you. Almost I started with my personal experience. I came to US 20 years ago, and I was one of those young people with no English, no language, no money, and just with goals and dreams. So when we talk about, obstacles and microaggressions, and, I can give you and share lots of stories with you. And this is why, is one of the reasons why the work that I do and why I'm involved in this. I want to share with you this article that was published last year that I wrote
Yep.
with Deborah Peterson, and it's called Thriving in School Leadership, Latino Leaders Speak Out. So this article, we interview 10 successful Latina leaders in the state of Oregon. Okay, so that was the beginning of the work that I'm doing. I'm finishing actually my doctoral program right now, and I'm really focusing on effective characteristics of secondary leaders that work with minority students. That is part of my dissertation. But I'm going to invite you to read this document later, but I will share point out a few items from this article. Starting with the demographics, right? 36% of Oregon school children are children of color, and then you go down to 14% Oregon administrators are of color. And again, like I shared earlier, we talk about high school Latina principals. I'm one of the 2 or 3, I think. Superintendents, I believe, is only 2. So that's the reality right now.
Yeah, two.
Name them.
Yeah,
On one hand.
on 2 fingers.
Then, and I'm gonna skip some of this. So the study, again, we did this study. Oh, it's not
It
gonna-
was there.
Was there just a moment ago.
So we did this study again with 10 successful Latina leaders. And the idea was to learn, I mean, all the ideas that we keep hearing about mentorship programs, about recruiting, about scholarships and all that is all valuable. But our idea and my goal when I'm talking about my studies and my research is about finding out exactly a little bit more than that. When we talk about the support that is needed, when we talk about how to fight those microaggressions that you have daily, or the obstacles that you have in front of you every day. Luckily, I've been lucky enough to be where I am, but I know a lot of friends that they have not been that, with that lucky, and that's my conversation. And again, going back to this article, 4 participants were born in Spanish-speaking countries, 6 in the U.S. Spanish was the first language for all participants, with the exception of 1 respondent who raised speaking what he describes as Spanglish. Okay, 4 women and 6 men. Then the U.S. born began as an instructional assistant, educational assistant, or working after the school. So this is kind of the points that I want to make sure that you put in the context, right, when we talk about the idea of recruitment. Then the born began outside of K-12 educational system, and 2 in high prestige jobs and 2 in low prestige jobs. So, I was one of them that came, and I was working at McDonald's or cleaning floors. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. The first thing when we ask, we ask several questions. One of them, someone saw something in me. So the mentorship piece. Somebody pay attention to my qualities, to maybe my drive, my my feelings, my wanting, my desire. A teacher, counselor, after school teacher, they notice them, they care for them, They encourage them to go to college. So exactly what we're talking in terms of our high school students, our students in general. Or even, again, when we talk about educational assistants after school, people that sometimes they're around us, right? And the ones that are born outside, 3 have supporters encouraging education as a career. Then here are the supporters. So women more likely to offer support to Latino, Latina future educators. Interesting, right? Women leaders more likely to have supporters of non-Latino, Latina background. All respondents had white supporters as well as Latino, Latina, African American, and or Black supporters. Okay, so along the way, someone was there. The social justice orientation was another big thing that we were able to bring out of this study. So all U.S. born were involved in social justice in formative times, farm workers, civil rights, justice system, and the ones that they came from outside the United States, they became social justice leaders. Why? Because they were experiencing or seeing those disparities and those racism and discrimination. And the social justice became a moral compass. So when we talk about obstacles, here you go, the system, right, what we call the system, the U.S. educational system, could be all the way from specific systems in a district, all the way to maybe certification, right, etc. Navigating the socio-political landscape successfully, with no support, having to prove oneself over and over and over again, which I can totally relate to that as well, as we speak. I still believe that I need to do that. Quotes, I had to be better, be stronger, be smarter, because people in the community are looking to me to fail. Hiring barriers, why people making hiring decisions. Pressure in personal and professional life. All experience microaggressions regularly, all but one experience over recent comment directed at them within the last 5 years. I did this study last year. The one exception over racist comments about another leader of color. So, quote, oh, you are documented? Are you related to the guys in the taco truck? Running a Mexican time, are you?
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about leaders, educational leaders in the state of Oregon that I interviewed. Okay? So, just to put in context. So how they respond, they were able to respond ignoring and not responding actually. Or one leader who spoke out about the racist comment had professional consequences. Demotion, isolation, lack of promotion opportunity. So then we asked the question about what leaders needed in their preparation and they didn't get it. So this is specific about the preparation. And they talk about explicit conversations about how their race and ethnicity will impact their work. That was number one, right away. The coaching and how to respond to those macroaggressions. What to do? Do I just ignore it? Or I say something with, maybe an implication later? Parents, students, and community members, bosses make racist comments. How to lead for equity and lead for the change process. Leaders of color sharing their stories and strategies. That was one of the top, again. So I can go to classes and I can get as much as professional development they provide me, but I want to hear someone like me to share their own personal stories, because I want to be prepared and I want to be ready. So advice. So then we asked them, what advice you give to future Latino, Latina leaders? They talk about, number one, make sure that you know that you're going to be under this scrutiny. People are going to be looking at you. They're going to be watching you. They're going to be even watching you inside and outside work, what you do. 24 hours, 7 days a week. Even after 10 years of proving myself, I had to show that I can do that every time. Understand the culture of the place where you are working. Work to support all students. By doing that, people begin to see your work and begin to trust you, and you generate credibility. Develop a thick skin. Keep a focus on the needs of the children to help you persevere through challenging times and the resiliency strategies. So the thick skin, again, I was really so, I was a little bit in shock with the answers that we got from these leaders. And they were so truthful about it and honest about it. And the more that I learn, the more that I study the subject, the more that I see it, that is a pattern, right, in terms of make good decisions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in your personal and professional life.
Easier said than done. Pretty high bar.
And be ready. Some Latina colleagues question your commitment to Latino students and the Latino culture because of their focus on kids, not just Latina students, right? And adopt the rest of norms of leaders of the dominant culture to avoid the criticism for teachers, family members, or community members. And then the mentor and network piece. Develop the strong network of school leaders that you can count on, right? The phone call, the conversation, that hey, I'm going through this. And that's why, that's one of the parts that OALA is doing with our mentorship program. I mean, those mentees, proteges, they know that I'm available. I get emails all the time. This is what I'm dealing with, please advise. Sure, let's talk about it. And your network may be of a different gender, race, or ethnicity than you, for sure.
Did that one really, was that related to support networks?
Support network, yeah. And in OALA, one of the goals that I, as a president, and actually my research as well, I'm not just looking at Latina leaders, I'm looking about the white allies as well. I think it's extremely important that we work in collaboration, and it's not just looking at Latina leaders, because all of you
They're not enough
are
to either
allies.
in those positions.
Exactly, yeah.
And the research with faculty also demonstrates something along the same lines, that the research network, one has to be strategic about aligning what your needs are with who can deliver it. So junior faculty, for example, have a very hard time getting in on collaborative efforts for research. And if their counterparts who are also people of color and not getting research grants, they cannot get in and get their foot in. So they have to be able to find allies among whoever it is, and usually, depending on the demographics of the institution, they are white. So you can become part of a research collaborative and then shoot out on your own. But if you haven't figured out that's how you get the research grant,
Yep.
you won't get it.
Correct. Yeah. And then we talked a little bit with them about mentoring programs. This is part of my work, and it's part of the paper as well. And the opportunities for leadership in a school. So all these different areas, right, like site council, leadership academies, all the way to equity teams, student study teams, and etc. You name it. So I would like to finish this part with in page. Doesn't have a page number. So, but here it says something about despite these stated goals and obstacles face current and future leaders of color, some may wonder how Latino leaders can possibly survive, let alone thrive, under these conditions. Obstacles begin in the K-12 school system and continue leadership preparation programs in which leaders are unprepared for leadership for equity, particularly as members of the non-dominant culture. Obstacles persist through employment practices that failed to hire, support, and retain the school leaders of color, and including dignities that range from microaggressions to racist comments. Despite these obstacles, barriers that might cause them to leave the profession or retreat into complacency, the Latina leaders in this study are thriving. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So when we talk in terms of recruitment and retention, the work it needs to continue, right? But I mean, I think the first step is what many of you are doing about recruiting, about giving opportunities, about giving scholarships. But how to sustain that work, how to mentor them. I mean, somebody asked me the other day about how can we recruit more teachers for our bilingual programs, right? So we have one solution, which is to grow our own, right?
Yep.
But then that's not enough, because we have thousands of Latina children, for example, right? And we need more and more teachers. So then the idea is, let's bring teachers from outside the United States. Okay, if you do that,
They don't
how are you going to
They don't
support
stay.
them? Because
a good idea.
we have several in my district before, and after a year, see you
They're
later.
gone. Oh, yeah.
So, but because we don't spend time talking about this, we don't spend time really the mentoring piece. What that means, I guess that's the main question. What that means to mentor someone to be successful. And by no means I want to, all the minority or aspiring minority teachers and leaders to go through what I've been through, because that is not what it's all about. I mean, again, I've been lucky enough to get to this point, but just because I like to fight my battles and I have clear goals, but I want to be able to make it a little bit easier. I want to be able to make sure what these people are saying, that, somebody says something to me, somebody give me the support and the courage, and the encouragement. And I think this is extremely important. That's why, again, I appreciate this conversation, and I'm happy to join anytime. So in terms of the OALA, again, we have this mentorship program, and that is what is, for us, is more than just, it's not the taking the class, it's about the outside experience. It's about let me tell you what is all this about. Let me be available. We connect proteges with mentors, so they have one-on-one support for the whole year. I mean, sometimes these proteges, they come and follow me for a day in my school, and we talk and we have these conversations when they participate in meetings with my parents, with the kids, I had all my colleagues in the high school are white, the other leaders, so they are sitting there and they see how I behave, right, and how I act, because it's important. And and I have more information about this, but again, feel free to read the paper that I wrote, and again, I believe that all these ideas with tuition reimbursement or scholarships and programs that are coming up is great. It's great, but again, my main question is how the next step.
Yep.
Right? It's like we're graduating, like in my school, we're graduating our Latino kids. So now
Then what?
I'm pushing my
That's right.
teachers to
Then
think
what?
about now what. So our next, talking about going from good to great, is college ready. They're gonna graduate from
College
college.
ready.
So that's the
That's
next step. So what's the next step for
That's
this
right.
work? So,
Excellent.
thank you.
I feel like this is, go ahead.
Oh, I have to go.
No, please.
Well, many challenges remain, but I'd like to just provide a little bit more historical context here because of the work that OALA has done over the last 14 years. You mentioned, Victor, in your first slide, 36% of Oregon students are of color, and about 2003, at the second year of the beginning of NCLB, approximately 20% of the students in Oregon were of color, and now 36, as we approach the very beginning of the implementation of ESSA, okay? 8%, you mentioned, Victor, were teachers of color. In about 2002, 2003, 4% of our students, of our teachers, were of color. So we've gone from 4% to 8%, 20% to 36%. Administrators of color, now 14. In 2003, approximately 4%, a little under 4%. And so that has gone from about 4% up to 14%. And this is really important because of the contribution that OWALA has made in the state. It was one of the first state affiliates of ATLAS, which is the National Organization of Latino Administrators. And it's been one of the most engaging and fastest growing ones as well. I remember when OWALA had 8 people. And I was at the first meeting of OWALA with Carlos Perez, Perla Rodriguez, Gustavo Balderas, and a few others, Mario Alba, et cetera, et cetera. 8 people, and now 300.
yeah.
So now, I'm not suggesting any particular causality. The demographics have shifted in that time, as we predicted at that point in time. But also, we're getting better at what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have a mentorship program like this when we started this work a long time ago as a state. And so I think, I just want to say right out there that OWALA should be commended for the work that it's doing. The peer-to-peer mentoring piece right here is something that we should be pushing very hard on for more systemic and statewide funding and support because of the growth of the Latino population. And early on, in early NCLB time, before we started disaggregating data, the conversation was very much in Oregon still around, well, we've got a big problem. We have all these Latino students in this state. And it wasn't even framed as an opportunity. It's an opportunity. And so this is really fantastic to hear your presentation today. I really appreciate it, and I know of your leadership
Thank
in OWALA, and congratulations.
And thank you, Rob. And I want to add that, and we're available. I've been doing just the past few months some work with Wilsonville School District. I had a couple sessions with all their administration and the few teachers of color sitting on the same table and me talking about this, so you can imagine. It was a good conversation with John Lenson as well. So we're available. We're available because we want to do that, and we're gonna have that conversation one-on-one or in groups, and be really specific about it. So thank you.
So let's say thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you so much. And I think that there's a Portland event tomorrow night.
Yes, that one is by invitation.
Yes.
And then
I got one, and I'm going.
perfect. So I will be there.
And Dina's
And then February 10 and 11, we're gonna have our conference. This is the last year that it's gonna be, we have a pre-conference on Friday the 10th, 2 o'clock, and then the president reception, University of Oregon, thanks to the Faculty of Education. And then we're gonna have a pre-conference that the main topic is about post-election conversation with our students. Okay, so you are all invited. And then Saturday will be the whole day conference. Next year, we're gonna extend it to 2-day conference.
Good.
Okay, so,
Good.
and we're coming back to the Portland metro area. It's much needed, people asking, so this is
Right.
the last time that it's gonna be kind of day and a half. Next year will be 2018, 2 days.
And I
So
think,
you're invited.
Hilda, didn't you present at OWALA last year?
The last 2 years.
Last 2 years?
And we just also have
And I saw your
received
name, yes.
Yes.
a recommend, or a,
So we want to keep
Presentation
that connection going.
confirmation.
Yep.
So to that end, thank you so much, presenters, for, it's so rich, it could go on for days, but it can't. This is a good segue into the legislation that we have proposed, which you find in your materials. So if you will look at your materials, you see Senate Bill 182. Once again, the Ed Equity Committee is not just a committee where we talk, we're looking for action and actionable steps, and I'm going to turn this over to Hilda.
So those of you familiar with reading legislation know that we take a lot of pages to say something, but your summary that's here at the top of the first page really gives you a nutshell view of what this particular bill is designed to do. I need to back up for a moment and remind you all that this spring, the governor issued an executive order charging a council to be formed on educator advancement, very clear specifications that it was not to be made up of the heads of agencies and heads of organizations, but also but really more of a focus on teacher voice and practicing educator voice, communities of color, and also those individuals who in ed prep programs. So that group met and provided a report to the governor in November with 10 recommendations that I've mentioned to many of you before. But this bill is not designed to do all of that work. It's designed to set up the changes in statute that need to occur for the recommendations to be able to move forward. So I'll give you one insight here. You all know that there is a network for quality teaching and learning that was established in the legislature in 2013 with a specified amount, sits at around 33 million, goes up and down depending on the general school fund. And it was used to fund a number of initiatives, quite a few in the 13-15 biennium, a fewer number in 15-17 biennium. One of the issues, however, is that those needs are still driven by not the educators themselves necessarily, but quite often from voices in Salem, whether it be legislators saying, I think you should use this amount for this, and et cetera, or even Salem agencies that were given responsibilities to carry out the charge of the network. What has been clear in the conversation of the council is that the system needs to flip, that the needs of educators around professional learning and supports, and we think of this as a continuum all the way from pre-service through career advancement, that those needs need to come to they need to come up from the voices of those who are clearest in those positions, and that there needs to be a level of accountability around how those funds are used to really drive equity practices and to support educators at every stage. So what this bill does is it removes the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning. It establishes the Educator Advancement Council. It describes some of the duties of the council. You'll find that on page, I believe, 5, or no, 6. Yes, page 5, middle of the page, where you see the language in bold. The difference that this would have is that the council is proposing an established intergovernmental agreement to operate these funds. In other words, rather than have one agency in charge of it, without the voice of all the other agencies and private and public partnerships that are making a difference, this would allow that to operate in a different way. Right now, the money all goes to the Department of Ed, and then the Department of Ed distributes it, reports out to the legislators. What this would do would be to create a cross-sector council that is responsible for being responsive to the needs and priorities of educators. And what's really excites me about this is it's not just one group of voices. If you think about it right now, we have a State Board of Education. We have a TSPC commission. We have boards for every university. We have, a COSA organization. We have a WALA. We have Chalkboard. But what we don't have is a real council that has voices from all the critical partners being brought together, being held accountable for how these funds support educators and are responsive to their needs. In addition to that, this establishes, it simply changes the name of the Network Fund to the Educator Advancement Fund, and it appropriates the funds to the council instead of to the Department of Ed. Right now, there is a group of the council that is working closely on intergovernmental agreements that are permissible by state law that would enable this group to function. It also does include, as you can see, under authorizing the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission, the funding that was recommended from this group that went to the council and then also went to the governor and is included in her recommended budget. and that was to award monies to scholarships that would support candidates of color and students from cultural linguistic backgrounds that are already in a program. The issue being not to give the money to the institution, because we know, first of all, the institutions need to take something off of that then, and it also doesn't follow the student. So the idea here is that the student would be the recipient of that. With that, we have the opportunity, and I would say this group, as well as the council, will be looking for some folks to work together on two major tasks. One is to define the basic rudimentary rules and regulations around how the scholarships are administered. We are so grateful to be a partner with HEC on this because the Oregon's Office of Student Access and Completion, I always get caught on the old name. But see, I don't use acronyms now. Used to have to pay Nancy Golden every time you used an acronym. So the Office of Student Access and Completion, they actually administer well over 500 different types of grants and scholarships right now to students. So they're very familiar with the process of how to do that. But they will be seeking guidance from this group and from council members on, well, how are those funds going to be distributed? We laid out around 5,000 per year, not to max 5,000. And we also did take into consideration that for students who are moving through the pipeline of community college onto a program, that this really could do a tremendous lot of good in terms of helping reduce debt. I mentioned the last thing here, there are some pieces in here from Early Learning Division that were also one of the recommendations around creating a more seamless system across our early learning providers and not just our K-12 providers. That is the most incredibly short synthesis of this bill. If you're wondering about all of, pardon? Well, yeah, and we can do a lot longer, but we won't. But any questions that you have, we'd be glad to take those questions. I also have shared with Lindsay Capps that I am very confident that there are members of this group that, if asked or needed, would provide written testimony or would provide in-person testimony when we are brought to either, it's probably going to go through the Senate Ed Committee, but there's also a Ways and Means potential that we may be gathering some information for them as well. So don't be surprised if you get a call out saying, hey, we just got word, there's a hearing, would you be willing to provide some written testimony? And I think each of you were hand-selected for this group because you bring a unique perspective and you bring a unique element of what is necessary to make this work. For example, let's make sure that supports continue beyond the time that they're in the program. We need cultural navigators, we need systems to expand the partnerships so that we're not just, some programs in the state benefiting. Okay?
But is there anybody that we know that will be invited to this committee? And will anybody in this committee be part of that group?
There will be, the members, the final members have not been determined at all. We will not do that until the legislation passes. So there is right now currently one representative from Educator Prep. I'm looking at you. I've already had a conversation with Leif Gustafson suggesting that there could be an opportunity for a private institution to be represented as well. So, okay.
Any other questions? What's good is to have the work that we've been working on inculcated into other work, because I think it becomes more sustainable when it isn't standing out there by itself. And it shouldn't stand out there by itself because it's part of this greater work.
Well, and I think you also
In my
are standing right behind the governor on this. The governor is very strong in her legislative agenda. She has included, and when you get that down to one page, you really have groomed down what you think is a priority, and it is on that one pager. We know that this is a very tough budget year in the legislature, so we know that anything will be viewed as, oh my goodness, we're taking away funds from something else. And so that's where it's going to be critical for us to stand strong on, that these are things that are necessary to improve the long-term capacity of our system to serve every student successfully.
I think one of the things that we've done well, that you and others is that we have data to support what we're doing. It isn't just
Absolutely.
because
That's
it's
right.
a good or even the right thing to do, is there's data to support what
Yes.
we're doing. So that's how we can
Yes.
defend what we're doing.
Thank you.
We are planning a spring meeting on talent management, which is going to be connecting ed prep programs with OSPA. So we're looking.
That's the Oregon School Personnel Association.
So HR and educator prep plus TSBC, we're hoping that they would be connected because of their crucial connection to this work. And we are looking for a date for that convening, and we'll let you know. Right now, we're looking at end of February, March. At the February 16th next meeting of this group, we're hoping to have a presentation about EdTPA, and that's important for this group.
Did you say February or March?
I thought that was February
No,
16th.
March.
Oh, that's going to be March.
Andrea Whitaker is the lead person with Stanford
March
that is
meeting.
looking at, that hosts the TPA, and they know that we have some questions and concerns about what they're learning from their research on whether or not this becomes another barrier for students as they move forward. It's a performance assessment now required of all students becoming teachers.
And so if given an opportunity to attend the talent management, I would hope that our group would be able to attend that because that's coming out of this team. And then finally, I don't think we're going to give you a totally complete proposal on all the presentations that we're doing the rest of the year, but suffice to say we're everywhere. And our next presentation is a week from tomorrow at the Oregon Association of Central Office Administrators at COSA. I'm going to be doing that presentation on the Ed Equity Committee update. People got to see it last year. Now they'll see the update. It's one of the few COSA presentations on equity, frankly. A lot of times comes out of this work. We don't get a whole lot of airtime. And we also presented at OSBA, and I felt like it was an excellent time. We had a really good time. Markeisha was there. That was really good. I was there. That was really good.
And we have a presentation at OWALA in
At Awala,
February,
we
and
the ELL
also
conference in
the
March.
English Learners
Yes. March 9th
Conference
and
in
10th.
March, and
Yep.
I'm trying to remember, I think we haven't heard back on OR-rate.
We
Yep.
did hear back.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, we're in.
Yep.
I don't
So
think I have the details.
it's super important to us that this report
Okay.
and the work of this group is not a report on a shelf. And frankly, my own story as a superintendent is I have plenty to do. So I'm not going to be involved in something just because. It's going to be because we're actually going to get somewhere. And frankly, it benefits my district directly. A lot of the HR directors are looking for anti-bias training and selection and hiring of staff. And we don't have a really good suggestion about that yet. So we
We're
would
getting there, though.
really
We're getting
love
there.
to get to a place where we can do
Our
that.
equity team is getting there. We're working on something.
So we definitely hear that from HR directors everywhere, that they're looking for this kind of training, and we want to be able to do that. And there's lots of great things going on. Anything for the good of the order. The next meeting is February 16th. Please be there, be square. Where's it going to be? Is it here or is it at Rob's place? I don't know, Rob, is it your place?
I think it's at Rob's,
I think it's at Rob's.
at Northwest,
Yep, we switch
Education
off,
Northwest.
so.
Having somebody new in the group always reminds me that
Yep.
we just throw these acronyms out. and-
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah.
It's a learning curve.
And if you are in Multnomah County,
Monica.
come on Saturday to
Monica's right here.
Senator Merkley's.
Monica has come.
I know, I just want to mention Senator Merkley's Town Hall, please, don't miss that. It's from 2 to 4:30 at Park Rose Middle School. Yes, go ahead, Monica.
So something that came from one of the discussions with our professional practice team is that oftentimes the commission will impose a sanction or use some sort of take some action on a license. And many times there are, it's mostly about, back to the cultural competence issue. Many resources are not really readily available. And so when the commission says, we want you to really look into, how you interact with either students or even adults, other faculty members, and to really have some solid professional learning opportunities that we could point these particular teachers or educators to when the commission does, say, you have to complete this and do this. I think that this is a perfect venue or a perfect group to be able to provide some of those resources. I know, we reached out to Rob Larson. Thanks, Rob, for helping us to find some of those immediate needs that we had. But this is something that I'd like to maybe put on the agenda at some point to talk about, identifying some really meaningful resources to help educators who have had an action taken against their license because they just don't quite get it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you
And you're
very
getting some
much.
nods around the table that people concur with that, Monica.
Thank you.
I think the one thing that we have been very clear about to date is that the charge of this particular advisory group has stayed very focused on educator workforce and has not taken on the even equally important focus around professional learning per se, because that is such a big one. We have zero budget, by the way, for everything that we do.
Yes.
But we are already seeing several bills that are emerging that we'll be monitoring. And also the council has specifically raised this as an issue with some work group areas that are going to get underway, Monica. So I just now know which one to put you on.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, guys, so everybody on the phone, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the fact that you would call into this meeting and stay on the phone for 2 hours with us. It is very, very appreciated. And thank you, everyone who came, and I hope to see you at the February meeting. Come back, bring your energy, and don't forget to fight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.